Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. So today we're going to be talking about implementing innovative language practices on campus and residences and private student organizations, focusing mainly on the living spaces. My name is Sanet de Jager, and I am an interpreter at the Language Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Mbalenhle Shandu and I'm a second year computer science student residing in Aäron residence. Thank you.
Great. So we'll be talking about some practical things residences can do to navigate the multilingual space. So multilingualism in the living space. Now, first off, why are we talking about this? Why is this so important? And that's because the living space needs to be a safe haven. That's the place you come home to after a tough day out in the academic world. One of the things that determine whether the space feels safe and welcoming is the language we use. So language lives inside each of us, and the ways that we connect with the world and its people is through language. So the way you get to know me is through language. The way I can share my thoughts and experiences with you is through language. So language is a part of us, and we need to make space for language so that we can make space for people. So I have 3 tips or 3 things we can do in residences to make this multilingual space more of a reality. So number 1 is ask each other. So we've already said don't treat language like an elephant in the room in the lecture space, and the same is true in the residences. So don't be awkward about talking about language. Address it, and don't just address it informally. Have a meeting, come together and talk to each other about language. Find out which languages residents use or embody, and try to steer clear of questions that insinuate proficiency, like, do you speak English? Because what people could hear is, are you good at English? And we don't want to ask that kind of question. We want to rather ask, what languages do you use? And you can expand on that thought. What language do you use for writing, for reading, for talking to your family, for talking to your friends? Which languages would you like to use in this space to feel like you're able to express all of yourself? And then link multilingualism to a residence value, like inclusivity, for example. This way, multilingualism becomes a way to achieve a shared vision. And the reason we care about multilingualism isn't primarily for the sake of language in books or on paper, but instead because we care about people and their expression. The next one is ask an expert. So at the beginning of this year, Mbalenhle invited the Language Center to speak to the first years at Aäron residents about honoring each other's languages, the different aids for people who do not speak English or Afrikaans, and just general language appreciation. Getting external recommendations from the Language Center, for example, can reinforce the importance of multilingualism. I think it's also important to remember that the majority of our nation is multilingual, but navigating the multilingual space is a learned skill. So often when people don't get it right, it's not because they're malicious, it's most probably because they just don't know how to. So asking an expert can help offer solutions, help think of innovative ideas, and also ensure that the people have the right narrative surrounding language and multilingualism. That is a narrative that aligns with the values of the university and with the values of the residents. And then just important to get back to your own residents again and take ownership, have agency. So now you've listened to some ideas and solutions, but it's important for the residents to negotiate how to navigate the multilingual space in a way that works for them personally. So all of the residents need to feel like they have agency in the way language is used and viewed in their own living space. And then finally, remember your goal. So the goal of multilingualism is for people to feel connected, included, and recognized. It's to make sure people are valued regardless of the language they speak. And in addition to this, multilingualism can speak to a resident's value like inclusivity. So if that is the goal, the residents needs to constantly assess whether the way they've decided to approach multilingualism honors the values of the residents and the university. So on an individual basis, You're going to ask yourself, am I using language in a way that includes, or am I using language that excludes? So am I using language to gossip, or am I using language to make people feel included? On a communal level, are the solutions we found to navigate the multilingual space still working? And if not, renegotiate. So now that I've spoken about some of the principles that could help, Mbalenhle will give us some real-life examples of what they're doing in Erica residence and some of the other residences. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just taking control of the PowerPoint. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity yet again. So as Sanet has elaborated, a living space shapes our experiences and the people that we are becoming. And I think as much as a lot of what goes on is not always controllable, there are many opportunities where we can use the space to kind of transcend having diversity as just being a token word. So last year, as a house, we made inclusivity one of our values, and it's so easy to get lost in all this terminology and actually miss out on making any practical changes. So I would like to give some examples of things that we've implemented, and I've heard other communities implementing as well in their pursuit to integrate multilingualism and honoring multilingualism into the space. So practicing diversity in a space does not have to come across as corny or you're ticking off a specific box, because that's how it can feel sometimes. I believe that it can still be done in a way that shows intentionality while still being fun and engaging. And this year I had the honor of being the welcoming leader for Erica, and that was kind of where I was able to experiment with a lot of these approaches to integrating multilingualism and honoring culture around us. So one of the things we did was we allocated a slot to Indigenous games, right? So growing up, there are these games that we grew up playing in our communities that transcend sports code, but kind of were passed down on generations or were made up on the fly. And so when we were playing these games, it was so amazing to see the newcomers engage with each other in the sense where you have people from completely different sides of the country and even in the continent in some cases, being able to recognize some of these games. So we played things like Shumpu, Three Sticks, Musical Chairs, Open Gates, and a lot of other games. And seeing people be able to name those things in their own languages and find that link was amazing. And that was just an example of one way we kind of honored that. Another thing that we did was during welcoming, I met a girl and her name is Shuluva and her name is in Venda. And her name in Venda, the meaning of her name is what my name means in Zulu. So we used that to kind of have a session with the newcomers where we sat in a circle and everyone said their name and what it meant. And it was amazing to see people starting to see the link between how they have names that mean the same things, even if it's in different languages, and kind of just crossing that barrier. Another thing that we did was every morning we started off with a house committee member saying a quote, and then we wanted to build a culture of honoring each other through greeting. So we would we would have a daily greeting, which would be like a greeting in one of the South African languages. And that would be the greeting we would use to honor each other during the day. And we also made this available in the welcoming booklet. And then we also later on put it on the culture board so that the rest of the house could also just learn what are the other greetings in South African languages. Because we really want to honor language in this space and just, make it like seeing that we don't have one standard, but we are welcoming to all of the different languages as well. Differences are isolating and can be intimidating, but I think through the different things that I've listed, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build relatability, because when you have relatability, it builds relevance. And I think one of the questions was, what about the people who aren't interested and do not see it as important to learn the skill of other people's language and stuff? And I think once you're able to build relevance, you're able to give people the incentive to want to actually learn more about other people's languages because they see links and it's no longer just abstract. You start seeing the overflows and commonalities that exist in the different groups. So that's just with just how intentionality can actually flow in innovation. And also during our Res Ed sessions, it can be intimidating because some people felt that they could not properly articulate their thoughts in English. But we made this rule where it's like you can speak in your language and someone in the audience or a house committee member will try and translate what you've said so that you can also still feel like you have a space in this conversation. Okay, so here's another thing. So a living space kind of speaks without using any words, and this is through the subconscious effect of the things that perhaps we aren't always aware of. So I started taking notice of things like the name of events. So we have Hina Danita, Flaudifias, Fensters, Hayes Fonts, Hayes Dance, and all these names of events that were kind of monolingual still. And what this subconsciously does, it shapes the standard of belonging and the expectation around who is accepted and recognized in a space. And here's the thing about representation. Representation is not just about being seen, but it's about also being able to see yourself in a space. And so if we have one language and we use that around the space and the name of events and the name of like places in the rest. So we have the Ont, we have the Nessies, we have the Loop Vlog, and it's not really inclusive and representing the people who actually stay in this community. So we started being more intentional about that as well. And it's not to say that we need to now like have one like event and have all the South African languages in the name, but it's about distributing, you know, the different languages and the names of events and stuff like that, and just being intentional in that way as well. And I think also the music that we play when we have gatherings and things like that kind of can make people feel welcome or not. And also what languages we use in our channels of communication, like social media. All of these ways of actually not like non-verbal forms of communicating that we are welcoming and honoring of other people's languages and the cultures that exist in this space as well. And then finally, as Sanet mentioned, I think as a welcoming leader, allocating a slot to the language center was one of the best tools I think I would have given the newcomers in terms of equipping them with how they can have support in terms of the translation services that exist, and also just the academic assistance they can receive from that. So when we are given the program from the university to plan around, there are some prescribed slots in terms of things that are set in stone, like in terms of the allocated hours. And I would like to propose the idea that I think it would be great if this becomes something that is in the program as well, allocating a slot to the language center, because I think not just in terms of the academic assistance, but how they were able to bring the different perspective on why multilingualism matters and why it is actually essential and beneficial for us as individuals. It gave them the different perspective as well. And so I think that having that as a staple would be a great way to kind of boost what we're trying to work towards in our communities. So thank you yet again for the opportunity. And I think through everything, it's just saying that we can really make this practical, and it doesn't always require us to, you know, have mandates or whatever, but it's just thinking outside of the box and using the commonalities to actually build relevance, to boost incentive to be multilingual in our communities. Thank you.